We are less than 20 days from Christmas, and I have noticed that every December, even in my wee lifetime of 24 years, that there seem to be fewer and fewer Christmas decorations out. But there also seem to be more and more weed stores and neck tattoos and face piercings. I don't know about you, but I liked the world better when we had more Christmas decorations and less weed stores, neck tattoos, and face piercings. So today, we're going to try to get a little bit of that old America back and have a very wholesome episode appreciating Christmas art, from the holy to the familial to the commercial. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very wholesome episode of Timeless with Julie Hartman. It is great to be with you, and Merry almost Christmas. I just want to say at the outset that I'm lamenting the fact that we don't have enough Christmas decorations out in the month of December, but here I am wearing a garb today that is not in the Christmas colors, and I just want to acknowledge I am sorry that I did not dress more appropriately for this episode. But hey, I'm still trying to bring the Christmas spirit on this set. We've got these flowers here, which look very Christmassy, I think. And our friend the lion up there has a Santa hat on. So, yeah, in some ways I'm falling down on the Christmas responsibility, but in other ways, I mean, have you ever seen a lion with a Santa hat? Not until you tuned in today. Just as a reminder, in addition to Timeless, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we also have Dennis and Julie on this YouTube channel. That's every Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern. So please do check all of those things out. So yes, today we are looking at different kinds of Christmas art. Those of you who have been watching the show for some time now know that I have gotten really into art over the past year and a half. And that has been in large part due to a great friend of the show named Robert Florzak. He is an artist and art historian himself. He has done these PragerU videos called Why Classical Art is So Good and Why Modern Art is So Bad. I had him on this show to do a art episode called The Art of Art. And he has really kind of opened up this new world for me in exploring the beauty of art. We tend in our culture to think that we have to be experts on an artist or the scene that the painting is depicting or the techniques that the artist is using in order to fully understand it and appreciate it. But Robert, literally on this show, taught me, no, that is not the case. You can behold the beauty of the art for the beauty itself and appreciate that. And my gosh, I would be remiss as a host if I did not bring to you some examples of truly amazing Christian and Christmas-oriented art. This has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And in our modern day, we just kind of gloss over it and don't seem to appreciate it. So we're going to be looking at a lot of different kinds of art today. As I mentioned, we're going to be looking at holy art, familial art, and also commercial art with regard to Christmas. But first, before we dive in, I want to quickly recount the Nativity story, which is what the holiday of Christmas is all about, the birth of Christ, the Nativity. You would be amazed, or maybe you wouldn't be amazed, as to how few people actually know and are well-versed in this story, which changed the course of Western civilization, and again is the basis of the holiday that we're celebrating this month and of course on the actual day, December 25th. So I want to go through this quickly and just recount what an amazing story it is. God decided to come down in human form. But he didn't decide to come down on a cloud, replete with gold, garb, with a crown and a staff. No, he decided to come down in the most common, conventional, human way possible, and that is through a woman, a human being, Mary, in a bloody birth in a stable. And so to give literally the cliff notes of the book of Matthew and the book of Luke, which everyone should read this amazing story, the angel of God, Gabriel, comes down and tells Mary that she is going to give birth to a son, even though she's a virgin, and the son will be the Messiah, the Lord of the world. And of course, she is particularly surprised and terrified, but she views it as an amazing blessing that this is happening. Her husband, Joseph, was also kind of startled and terrified by the fact that his wife, Mary, with whom he has never had sexual relations, is all of a sudden pregnant with the child of the Lord. But an angel comes to Joseph as well and says to him, essentially, don't worry, your wife did not run out on you. This is an amazing thing. She has been conceived, a child has been conceived in her from the Holy Spirit. She'll give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus. And to Joseph's great credit, he says, okay, I don't quite understand this, but I'm on board with this. He demonstrates really great faith in undertaking something that kind of confuses him and certainly makes him uncomfortable, but he's trusting in his faith and going forward with it. And then the emperor of the Roman Empire, Caesar Augustus, decides to hold a census. Again, it's amazing like how few people know the kind of background details of this story. If you walked up to the average American or even the average Christian in the United States and asked what was the occasion for which Joseph and Mary were in Bethlehem, I bet only a small percentage of those individuals could answer correctly. It was because of a census, as I just said, that the Roman emperor was calling for, where everyone had to go to their hometown in order to be counted. And so Mary and Joseph, a pregnant Mary, go to Bethlehem, the city of David, where Joseph and his family is from. And all of a sudden, at the most inopportune time, Mary has to have the child. They go from door to door trying to find a place for Mary to give birth. But because so many people were going to Bethlehem because of the census, they were turned away. And so they happened upon a stable. They deemed it the only available place where Mary could give birth. And she gave birth to who Christians believe to be the Messiah, literally in a stable, wrapped him in cloths, and placed him in a manger because there was no crib. It's kind of a beautiful story for many reasons, but among them being that these individuals had no place to go. And then Mary gave birth to the Son of God. And I think that kind of reflects what Christianity does for people. When you have no place to go, sometimes you happen upon this glorious thing. And so again, to make a long story short, there's shepherds out in the field. The angel of God comes to the shepherds and says, hey, you got to check out this kid over in the stable. He's the Son of God. Go behold him. They go over and behold Jesus, the Son of God, in the stable. They go out and tell the whole town about the birth of the Son of God. All of these people come, including the wise men, and that is where I will end the story for now, although the story really does pick up after that because King Herod, the king at the time, learns from the wise men that the Messiah has been born, and he does not like that. He does not like having a rival to his power, to his glory, and so he wants to have the Messiah killed. But now that we've gone through that story, I think this will enhance our perception and understanding and reverence for these Christian paintings. So let's dive in here to, again, these depictions. The first section is of the holy part of the Christmas story. And let's start with Correggio's Nativity. This was painted from somewhere between 1528 and 1530. I think it's so cool that people have been talking about and painting and making art about this story, regardless if you believe in it or not. It is really cool that they've been doing that for hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay, so let's look here. One of the things that my dear Robert Florzak taught me to appreciate in paintings is how much work it takes to accomplish the shading and the light and all of the components of a realistic looking painting. Look at the light surrounding Christ and reflecting up on Mary the mother's face, and this light is illuminating all of the people around them in the painting. In fact, one of the women there, I don't know if she's an angel or she's just one of the many people who came by to see the birth of Christ after the shepherds had spread the word, she's literally blocking her face from the light. Do you know how difficult that is to paint? The great thing about paintings is that you look at them and you realize that they're literally just made from minerals. The artist at this time had to go gather these minerals, spend all this time in their workshop playing with different colors, and then, of course, apply it and make this painting. We forget that it's literally, again, made of minerals, but he was able to achieve that sense of light coming from the Messiah. I think another cool thing about this painting, and it will kind of stand in contrast to others. I've specifically picked paintings that I think depict this nativity story differently, and they each have their merits, of course. But what I like about this one is that it's so relatable. If you look at the face of Mary, she has this warm, loving smile. Sometimes in other paintings, as we'll see, of Mary, her face looks kind of austere and a bit distant. But you look at this Mary, and it's kind of like you know her, or you know someone like her. She looks like someone who you would encounter in your life. And her face, again, is so warm and loving, and you can just sense the joy that she has at looking at her newborn child, and not just any newborn child, the Son of God. And then we have these figures all around who are, again, relatable in their expressions. We have this girl, as I said, blocking her face from the light. She's kind of has this expression of like, what is going on? Why is there this light shining? She's both amazed and a little bit scared. Then you see above her these angels who are literally entangled in one another, trying to get a glimpse of Christ. And it just kind of shows all of the different emotions that were surrounding this nativity story. So that's Correggio. Correggio's Nativity. Very, very unique name he chose. Let's go to another artist, St. John, and he painted Nativity at Night. This was actually from the 15th century, 1460 to 1490, sometime in those 3 decades. So we see here that this is a very different depiction of the nativity scene. There's a similarity in the light emanating from Jesus here, the baby. Again, it is astounding how the artist is able to paint that in such an ethereal way and have the illumination on the faces of the people look so realistic. The shadow surrounding them and the coloring is exactly what it looks like if you shined a flashlight onto someone's face. That takes an enormous amount of work and perceptiveness and detail in order to accomplish. But we see that the faces of these individuals are very different from the Correggio painting. Mary, unlike Correggio's Mary, this Mary in this piece, doesn't have the warm smile that the other Mary does. She looks astonished and scared and a bit distant. Even certainly her facial expression looks a bit distant, but I even think her face, like literally the way that her features are arranged, looks distant too, because she doesn't look like a human who you would encounter on the street. And you look at those other angels and their faces, and they look like little nymph-ish figures. Like they don't look quite realistic. The baby itself, does that look like a realistic baby to you? No offense to this painter and to the Son of God, but kind of looks like a creepy little baby. Sean's laughing. Do you not agree? I mean, that doesn't look like someone that you would encounter. But again, I think that may be kind of the point. At the risk of reading too much into the artist's painting, maybe that was what he was trying to accomplish. Because as relatable in many ways as the nativity story is, it's also quite distant from us. it's very difficult to imagine in real life a everyday woman being impregnated by the Holy Spirit and giving birth to the Son of God. And so perhaps by painting these figures in a kind of distant way where they don't seem as relatable, it's capturing the difficulty in accessing that story. And then let's look up at that angel figure, or maybe that's the Holy Spirit. I don't know. But again, as Robert has taught me, you don't need to know. You just can appreciate the artistry for what it is. That is really, really fine detail in painting that ethereal figure. And then what's also cool is if you look outside of the window of the stable, you sort of see, and it's hard to make out, you see like sheep on the hills and shepherds around them, and it gives this sense of mystery, like what's going on out there? Who are those people who are gathering to come in and see the Son of God? Also, it's nighttime, which kind of reflects another mysterious, perhaps even foreboding mood. We don't know, at least it doesn't say in the Gospels, what time of day Christ was born. And so I think artists tend to play around sometimes, depicting it at night and depicting it at daytime to kind of suffuse the mood into the painting that they wish to suffuse. And nighttime, of course, is always associated with, as I said, mystery and a bit of foreboding. And as we know from King Herod's desire to get rid of Christ, that the foreboding perhaps depicted here is not unwarranted. Speaking of a daytime nativity, we'll go to our third classical Renaissance depiction of that event. This is by Sandro Botticelli, and it is called Mystic Nativity. He was believed to have painted it between 1473 and 1475. This painting is kind of a doozy. There is a lot going on here, but as I said, it's in the daytime, which gives a different mood and a different feel. Wow. There are many figures. There are angels, there are shepherds. We see the wise men, not really sure on which side the wise men and the shepherds are, but we see, oh, well, I guess it would make sense that the wise men are on the left because there are three of them, and we knew that there were three wise men. But we see Joseph. We see, again, another kind of interesting depiction of the baby Christ. Looks a little bit, but not too much like a baby who we would see in person. And then, of course, Mother Mary. And above Mary, and above the foreground of the scene, there are these 12 angels who are dancing around in a circle with ribbons. And they have these plush, different but alternating colored dresses. And then we go below the center of the painting, and we see three angels who look like they are literally lifting up three men from the dregs of the ground. And we see on the ground that there are about 7, at least by my count, different demon figures that are being shown here. How interesting that in this scene of the Nativity, which is often just really depicted right then and there with the main figures, we see all of this kind of ethereal stuff going on above, and then this demon temptation / angel rescuing going on below. This painting, as obviously lovely and incredibly skilled as it is, kind of feels like an everything in the kitchen sink version of the Nativity story. There's just so many different people and characters and things going on. To me, it just seems a little too busy. Of course, I'd love to hear what you think about it, and especially if you disagree with me. But my eye doesn't quite know where to go. If you're a skilled artist, and this is easy for me to say as someone who has literally never painted anything good in my life, but what skilled artists tend to do is they tend to work with shading to draw your eye to a particular part of the painting. And that kind of has a way of giving your eye a rest. And oftentimes, again, with the shading, the painter may try to guide you to different people around the painting. This doesn't appear to have such a thing going on. There's no kind of focal point of this painting, and it's very assaulting on the eye. But we also have to understand the time in which this was painted. This is a Renaissance painting. And it seems so antithetical to our very secular, atheist, a-religious culture now. But Renaissance paintings were deemed good if they were overflowing with religious symbolism and with realistic depictions of people. That is what constituted greatness. The more religious references, the more beautiful and ornate and ethereal and heavenly and, divine-esque you could make the painting, the more that you were glorifying God and the Son of God, even if that painting, like this one, has a lot going on and it's very assaulting to the eye. I read online, as I was doing research on this painting, that 2 decades after Botticelli painted it in Italy, there was an event called the Bonfire of the Vanities. Now that's a name of I believe a book. Perhaps the book was made into a movie about life on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. But the real origin of the term Bonfire of the Vanities wasn't from that 20th century book. It was actually an event that happened in Florence, again, 20 years after Botticelli painted this masterpiece. And what happened was a Franciscan preacher in Florence gained a lot of traction. He was very popular. And he decreed that all of these secular, a-religious possessions ought to be burned, hence in a bonfire of the vanities. So anything that was deemed as tempting you towards sin or taking you away from being your most godly religious self was supposed to be burned in this bonfire. So there were all of these things: books, mirrors, of course, because mirrors are the ultimate, symbols of vanity, certain clothes, certain musical instruments, and even paintings, including some of Botticelli's paintings, were burned in this bonfire. Botticelli, yes, here is painting the epitome of a religious scene, but he was actually known as someone who tended to paint more pagan and mythological pieces of art. Botticelli's perhaps most famous painting, in addition to this one, is The Birth of Venus, which is a pagan mythological story. And so, again, I just think it's interesting, although we don't always need to have the full context of a painting in order to appreciate it. Here, I think it really helps because it shows that during the Renaissance, there was this time where the more that you threw into the painting, the more ornate and beautiful you made it, it was deemed as of higher quality and more glorifying of God. MyPillow is excited to bring you their biggest bedding sale ever, just in time for Christmas. Get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. A set of pillowcases for only $9.98. Rejuvenate your bed on a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. They also have blankets in a variety of sizes, colors, and styles. They even have blankets for your pets. Get duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more, all with the biggest discounts ever. They're also extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1st, 2024, making them the perfect gifts for your friends, your family, and everyone you know. So go to MyPillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 and you'll get huge discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. And get all your shopping done now while quantities last. So although it's not necessary to understand the historical context of the painting in order to appreciate it, I think it tells us something that this ornate, kind of in-your-face, very busy piece of art was created at this time where religious imagery was exalted for its detail, and things that were even perceived to be the slightest bit of vain or a-religious were literally burned in a fire in the center of Florence. My dear producer Sean told me his impression of this painting, and see, this is so great about art, that people can have different opinions. Seems like a very DEI equitable statement coming from me. Everyone's opinion matters in art. Sean says that he thinks that the color here brings you back to the center of Christ. Okay, I appreciate your opinion. Certainly the blue, I think you're right there, that the blue kind of has a swirling effect. Mary's cape and Joseph's top, if you will, and the lightness of Christ in the middle does bring you back. I've got to say, though, I still hold firm that I get distracted by a lot of other things. Two final things, although there are so many, to highlight in this painting, is if you look here at the center, there's the canopy, which is giving stable vibes, because Christ, as just mentioned, was born in a stable. But you also see that there's a cave. And that's because when Christ was resurrected, he walked out of a cave or out of a tomb. And so I think Botticelli is kind of playing with the two births, if you will, of Christ. The original birth in the stable, and then the second birth, the rebirth, his resurrection. And the second thing is that I read that in a lot of nativity paintings, Joseph is depicted as either ugly, kind of out to lunch, like looking away, or old. And so here in this Botticelli painting, we see that he looks old compared to a young Mother Mary. He has, what do you call that? What's that on a man? The dome? What do they call that? Like the bald dome where the rest of your hair is there, but just the top of your head is bald. So we can see that he's old, and we don't even see his face, but he's kind of hunched over in this old guy position. And the alleged reason for a lot of Renaissance classical artists' depiction of Joseph in this kind of way is because, again, Mother Mary was believed to have conceived the child without ever consummating her marriage with Joseph. And so Joseph is depicted in this way where he is not seen, for lack of a better description, as the most desirable partner to Mary, nor a threat to Mary's virginity, which is such a central component of Christianity. So now that we have seen these beautiful, classical, in the case of Botticelli, ornate depictions of this beautiful story, which we celebrate on December 25th, let's look at two modern examples of the Nativity. Let's start with Salvador Dali's 1959 painting, if we can even call it that, called Nativity. You can guess my opinion on this. Okay, let's say you were in an art museum and you were walking by this painting. Let's say you weren't watching Timeless with Julie Hartman's Christmas art episode. Would you walk by that and know that it's a nativity scene? You know it's a nativity scene because I'm telling it to you and I'm including this in this episode, but if you were in a museum, would you really be able to suss that out? I don't think so. Also, I don't think I would be able to even tell that there are two figures in that scene. Just try to take your bias out of it and really look at it. I don't think that my eye would make out those two figures. Oh no. Sean is telling me now that he knows what it is, he really likes it. Okay, I retract my original statement. Not all opinion in art matters. Some opinions are better than others. Mine. Some opinions are more lowly than others. His. You really like that? How is that? Okay, maybe Botticelli went a little bit overboard. How is Salvador Dali glorifying God and the miraculous, heavenly, virgin birth of the Messiah through this sludge, Sean McConnell? You just like it. Okay, well, good for you. See, I think that this actually shows the conceit of the artist, singular. Allow me to explain. In those first three paintings, the Correggio, the St. John, and the Botticelli paintings, you're so focused on the beauty of the scene, you're not thinking about the artist. In this one, Salvador Dali, at least to me, is so trying to impress you and do something odd and unconventional and out of the norm. Like, this is a take on the nativity scene that you've never seen before. And it has the effect of him inserting himself into his piece of art in the nativity scene, when really he should just create it and make it about the story itself and not his fun, modern social commentary that he's trying to suffuse with it. I'll be very curious, Shanzi, to see what you think of this next one. Let's go to Henry Moore, another modern painter. This is his 1981 Nativity. Gosh, these guys and their titles. Yeah. I'll just leave that for your consideration for a moment. Okay, Sean, good. You do have some good sense still about you. Sean said he doesn't like that. Again, if you were walking through a gallery and saw this, what would you think? I would think 3 ghosts with a lantern in the middle. Where even is the depiction of Christ? Do you see him? Is he supposed to be the lantern? Perhaps. But see, again, we see that the artist is trying to, I think, insert himself and his commentary more into the piece than letting you just appreciate it. You know, on another episode of Timeless, I talked about the way that advertising has changed over time, TV advertising specifically. Shameless plug for that episode, by the way. I think it's a good one. But we started out looking at TV advertisements of cars and cigarettes and other items in the 50s and 60s. And then we brought it up to the present day and considered, okay, what has changed? And my main thesis statement was that back in the 50s and 60s, what these commercials really intended to do was sell you the product based on the merits of the product. If you look at the Marlboro commercials for cigarettes, and I'm going to butcher this because I've never smoked a cigarette in my life and I don't know anything about it, but they were just going on and on about this many puffs per inhale and this long filter in the middle of the cigarette. You see, I have no idea to speak in cigarette speak because I've never spoken it. But the point is, for literally a minute of the commercial, you're just hearing about the different ways that the product is made and how that product is superior to others. And it was the same thing with cars and car commercials. Then you bring that to the present day. And the through line of many modern commercials is that they're not so much trying to sell it to you based on the merits of the product, but they're trying to kind of shock you. They're trying to do something that's so zany and so sarcastic that you'll remember the commercial. For example, I'm sure many of us have seen the commercials of the E-Trade talking baby. What does the E-Trade talking baby tell you about E-Trade? Very little. But we see those commercials and this baby's making a joke, and it's sort of with this intended effect of, wow, this company is so out there. They're so modern. They're so cool. They have a commercial of a talking baby. When I see the Dali and the Henry Moore depictions of the Nativity, I kind of think of the same thing. It's more about shock factor than actually creating a product that has really profound and great artistic merits. But that is just my opinion, my dears, and you're welcome to disagree, especially in the comment section. Let's go now to a few kind of quick round other depictions of nativities. This is my favorite section of the episode because we see the universality of the nativity story. This is a Hindu stamp that I am showing you. Wait, no, it's not. Thank you so much for putting this up. I forgot a huge one. But it actually still fits into what I was saying about the universality of the nativity story. This is a Paul Gauguin painting in 1896, also, shocker, called Nativity. And this is an islander take on the nativity story. This is a Tahitian painting. And so we see here that there is a woman, a Tahitian woman in the center who has just given birth. And then we see what looks to be a nurse holding the baby, and there's a halo around the baby. There's also a halo around the mother. And then in the background, there's another standing figure which looks to have green angel wings. And so look, this is, kind of a mix of a modern take and then a more with classical applications of form. It's not the modern, nonsensical nonsense of Dali and Henry Moore. But what's cool about this is that, again, it shows the universality of this nativity story. It's applicability across different cultures, not just white heterosexual culture. And it shows that every day, all day, there are nativity stories. There are births of children all the time. And each one of those is just as much a miracle as the most famous birth story of Christ. Okay, now let's go to the Hindu stamp, which I teased. Another multicultural image. So a little background, history on this one. This was created in 2005 by the Royal Mail in England, and they designed various stamps to show images of Mary, Madonna, and Child, drawn from European, Haitian, Italian, Indian, Native American, and Aboriginal artworks, because they were in this whole diversity push. The problem, though, is that this stamp got a lot of backlash. Interestingly, that painting is a Mughal-style painting which dates back to 1620. It's by an unknown artist, but it actually was believed to depict the nativity. Some thought, okay, the Royal Mail just appropriated this image of a mother, a father, and a child and made it the nativity scene. But no, there's evidence that actually the artist intended to paint Hindus, but in the nativity scene. But as I said, the Royal Mail got a lot of backlash, and they actually retracted this stamp because a lot of people were uncomfortable with the fact that a Hindu image depicting Hindus was used for a Christian festival or a Christian holiday. But I think it's cool, if you ask me. Let's go to Thai Jesus. That's our next depiction of the Nativity. This is at the Basilica of the Annunciation in Nazareth. So Jesus is called Jesus of Nazareth because that's where he grew up. And that's where his birth was announced, but he is born in Bethlehem. I have been to this Basilica of the Annunciation where Mary was believed to have been visited by the angel Gabriel, who told her that she was going to be giving birth to Christ. And all around the perimeter of this basilica, there are images of Mary and Jesus that were sent from different countries. And there was this request of people all across the world, paint or design your own country's depiction of this story. So here we see Thai Jesus. In our next picture, we have Ethiopian Jesus, also at the Basilica of the Annunciation. And then we have Korean Jesus. And trust me, there are so many Jesuses. There's French Jesus, Brazilian Jesus, Portuguese Jesus. You should all Google and see the different ways that these cultures depict this nativity story. By the way, a third of the Christian world in the United States is not white. So the next time that people tell you that Christianity is a white, nationalist, bigoted, whatever they say, religion, why don't you throw that fact back at them and talk about the multicultural depictions of the Nativity at the Basilica of the Annunciation, the very place where the whole idea of Jesus was revealed to the world. Okay, now we're going to go into the more commercial and familial depictions of Christmas, and we're going to look at a lot of Norman Rockwell. This first one is called Merry Christmas, Grandma, by Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell, in case you live under a rock, was a American painter, and he just painted quintessentially American scenes. He said that he painted America as he wanted it to be. But don't you look at this and just think back to your childhood and have nostalgia for times gone by? Interestingly, Norman Rockwell painted people he knew. So all of the people in his paintings are neighbors or relatives. Sometimes he's even painting himself in these images because he just so wanted them to seem real. I love looking at that little boy and his silly expression because it shows you, when was this painted? 1950, I believe. Shows you that kids were the same. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but don't you look at old depictions of human beings, like going back hundreds of years, or in this case, not hundreds, but decades, and you go, little kids were the same kind of silly then as they are now. Okay, next picture is little girl looking downstairs at a Christmas party. This is a real image of Julie Hartman at age 8. Gosh, I loved doing that, looking down when my parents would throw parties and people watching and so wishing that I was among them. So in that painting, Rockwell actually had people pose. Again, he was so determined to have it be realistic that every single one of those individuals were people that he assembled and had pose. And he had preparatory sketches too for each of these paintings. A lot of these paintings are enormous, but then he would do his own smaller sketches to really make sure that it would scale up. And the fun part about these Rockwell paintings is that there's always a kind of humorous, human story in them, where we see an emotion heightened and on display that all of us, to a different extent or in different settings, have experienced. In this case, the awe and wonder and interest of looking down as a little girl, wishing that you were adult-like and could go to the Christmas party. Ooh, this next painting is not the painting I'm gonna do. I have another Rockwell before this next one. Rockwell paints an unexpected Christmas discovery. It's another great one that we're showing. Oh, we all know that moment. Discovering when Santa, well, I'm not going to say it in case there are kids watching. But we all know that moment and how fun that this little kid discovered it through a costume. You know, that kid is actually depicted in other paintings too. So you can kind of see a through line in Rockwell's Christmas work where you recognize the same subject. And even look at the carpet, look at the wallpaper behind the door, the staircase with those panels. You really get a sense of the time period, that this was 50s and 60s America. This is the painting, this next one that I said, and this next one I was really puffing it up. This next one is really, I think, especially, really hits home, especially now, given what's going on in Israel. It depicts the church in Bethlehem where Jesus, that is built on the site where Jesus was born. I have been to that church. I'm sure many of you have as well. You go in and there's this little plaque where, again, Jesus was believed to have been born in the stable, and then they built this massive, glorious church in Bethlehem. And Rockwell this was about a decade before Rockwell died. This came out in 1970, and Rockwell died in 1978. And we just see the modern state of this holiday in this part of the world. Thousands of years after Christ was born, look at the religious state. You can see Muslims in the painting, Jews and Christians all coming together to go in on this day and pay homage to the birth of the Son of God. But then we see these soldiers here with machine guns and weapons having to stand guard. And then on the right, there are these tourists taking photos. And again, it's both a glorious and beautiful scene, and it's also a deeply sad scene that reflects the troubled political state of this part of the world. So this, as I said, was in 1970, which means that it was just 3 years after the Six-Day War in Israel. Six-Day War was in 1967, when Israel was invaded by all of the surrounding Arab nations and then conquered them and retook a lot of land. And so it was especially a troubled time, and sadly, not much has changed as far as the political trouble. And the final image I'll show you, which again falls into the more familial and commercial category of paintings, is Haddon Sundblom's depiction of Santa Claus. Thomas Nast, in addition to Haddon Sundblom, were the two American cartoonists and painters who really popularized the way that we understand Santa. Thomas Nast would depict Santa with a beard and as kind of a portly, overweight gentleman in a lot of his cartoons. But Haddon Sundblom's depiction of Santa, as we see here, this is from 1931, really kind of created the blueprint of Santa Claus. And interestingly, Coca-Cola commissioned Haddon Sundblom, who was a Michigan-born illustrator, to make a bunch of advertising images of Santa holding a Coke to get people to buy Coke. And so Haddon Sundblom created all of these different images and published them in the Saturday Evening Post, the Ladies' Home Journal, National Geographic, The New Yorker, among others. And he actually painted Santa using a live model. He was like Rockwell in that way. He didn't just paint humans in the ether. He had real people who were his subjects. And in this case, it was Haddon Sundblom's friend, Lou Prentice, who was a retired salesman. So every time you're seeing a depiction of Santa, it will probably bear striking resemblance to this American Lou Prentice. I hope that you enjoyed this show. I hope that you were able to appreciate this great art, ranging from the holy to the familial to the commercial. And again, we don't need to be experts. We just appreciate the different ways that people have chosen to celebrate this joyous holiday. I wish you all a very happy Christmas season, and stay tuned here on Timeless. I'll be doing some more Christmas-related episodes. See you soon. Take care.